Hello, everyone. Happy Friday, TGIF. We are glad to be at the end of another week, going into a weekend, Memorial Day weekend. I don't know about you, but I'm excited because I get a few days off. I took the day off, mental health break, and then we're going to have Monday off too. So that means I'm going to preach real good on Sunday because I ain't got to go to work on Monday. I mean, I preach good anyway, as the Lord gives it, but really preach good when you ain't got to be nowhere the next day. All right. Listen, we're going to jump right into the topic. As you know, this is Mental Health Awareness Month. This is a generalized topic that we cannot afford to treat it as a taboo topic, I should say. Because far too long, many people have tried to ignore the whole issue with mental illness, mental health on a generalized sense. But because so many people have been affected, many people close to us, a lot of strangers, church family members, co-workers, spouses, children, we can no longer continue to treat this, as a topic that is not important, because it's a very important topic. People are losing their lives. And this is what I often say. If we get people timely treatment, get them to some type of intervention, whether it's therapy, counseling, peer and family support groups, and, in extreme cases, get them to a psychiatric hospital, part of a hospital, then we can often intervene and stop things from growing worse, because anybody knows that if you don't treat a condition in a timely manner, you don't have the proper wellness tools, you don't have the proper treatment plan, you're not taking care of yourself, things can go from this small to this big, real quick. So we just want to talk today. The last few weeks have been great. We started off talking about depression. And let me say this before I jump in here. I'm a born-again, Holy Ghost-filled believer. So I do believe in Jesus Christ, but I also am a realist, and I'm a spiritual being living in this fleshly life. So I do understand there are certain things that are not spiritual topics. Okay, we must never leave Jesus out of anything, of course, but there are certain things we need to do from a realistic perspective. Okay, a natural perspective as it relates to taking care of our health. The wellness tools that we do, how we manage our emotions and our thought process on a day-to-day basis. Everything is not just a fasting and praying issue, okay? Everything is not just a fasting or praying issue. Everything is not just getting God's face and getting God's presence and everything is going to be okay. That is not the solution to everything, because I'm going to tell you why. A lot of times we think that all we have to do is just pray, we fast, we do all the religious rituals that we are required to do. And then God is just going to come down and just poof, now your schizophrenia is gone. Poof, your depression is gone. Poof, your anxiety is gone. All of this type of, stuff, all your sicknesses is gone. But more often than not, God doesn't work supernaturally. He works through our obedience to the instructions that he gives us to make our situations better. Okay, that's just like somebody, if you don't take care of your health, you live a sedentary lifestyle. And I always say this, a sedentary lifestyle is a friend of mental illness. All right. So if you live a sedentary lifestyle, you don't take care of yourself, you eat the wrong things, you have the wrong habits and things like that. You can't just pray and fast and God is just going to stop sickness from hitting your body or cure the sicknesses that are in your body. No. When you really go and pray, he's going to reveal, hey, you need to change your eating patterns. You need to change your resting and relaxation patterns. You need to change what you're putting in your body. You need to start exercising. A lot of stuff that we want to put on God to make us well from is no. He's saying, I'm putting it on you. I'll give you the instructions, the wisdom, and what to do. But you have to ultimately walk this out because you are the one that is living this life. Jesus is not living this life. You are living this life. He empowers you to do what you need to do to live a healthy, a productive, a holistic life. But it is you that actually has to walk this out. Okay. So a lot of times, I should say, We are stuck in our situation, sicknesses, circumstances, whatever the case may be, longer than we have to because we are not listening to the instructions that he's given us to make us well. We just think if I pray, he's going to make everything better. But more often than not, yes, there are certain things that God will do supernaturally through prayer. But more often than not through prayer, he intervenes by saying, hey, this is what you need to do. These are the instructions. These are the directions I'm giving you. And you'll see my hand move if you follow these instructions and directions, which tells us if he's revealing instructions and directions to you and you don't follow them, then you can't receive, your healing or your wholeness because you're trying to bypass what it is he's trying to tell you to do in order to be made well. Or to stop your situation from growing worse, okay? So yes, there's a healthy balance. God does intervene. He's a supernatural God, but a lot more often he's putting the power in your hands to do what you need to do, giving you the instructions, giving you the empowerment so that you can live this healthy and productive life. But nevertheless, I also believe no matter what mental illness, mental health disorder that you have, it is possible to be 100% healed and whole because I'm a living witness and many other people are living witnesses, various mental illnesses, mental health disorders of being 100% healed. When that healing comes and how it comes is different for everybody. Okay, you may have to go through your stage, for a year or two. Some people go through it a decade. Some people go through most of their life, but then I've even had people that went through certain mental health disorders and mental illnesses that have attested to being 100% healed. So I don't believe there's any problem that exists in this earth that does not have a 100% solution where it can cure that problem. Now, whether we find it or not, or we implement what we need for ourselves and go all the way with it to achieve that full healing and wholeness is on us. But I believe every problem has a solution somewhere. I don't care where it is. And that includes mental health disorders. So as I was saying, a couple of weeks ago, we talked about depression. We talked about various elements of depression, symptoms, causes. You can go back and watch that video. 2 weeks ago, we talked about anxiety disorders. Now, one of the things I wanted to point out about anxiety disorders, and we're going to get into schizophrenia briefly, and I will just be before you about 10 minutes. That's what a lot of preachers saying, that we end up being before you an hour. But I promise you I won't be before you that long. But with anxiety, you have to understand you have everyday anxiety, and then you have generalized anxiety disorder. So the difference would be is like you have a big speech to give or a big presentation at work and you start getting them anxious feelings. You start sweating, you get a little nervous, but that can keep you on your toes to say, hey, I better prepare and put my ducats in order, as they say, so I can do well. Now, anxiety disorder on the other side would be something like, nothing is wrong. You don't have nothing to plan for, nothing to be worried about, but you're worried that, oh man, what if the house burned down? Or what if my landlord come and tell me I need to pay extra rent? Or what if my kid get ran over by a bus while they're going to play outside? Or what if I go outside to take my car to get gas and a truck come and hit me? Those are anxiety disorders, unfounded reasons to be anxious, okay? And these are things that must be confronted because everything comes from a root. And as long as we try to tackle things from a surface perspective, we'll always deal with the issue. But once we start uncovering what's at the root, which does take a lot of work, then once we find out what's at the root, we can then formulate a action plan to tackle what's at the root and then push us closer to that, to living that healed and whole life. But nevertheless, let's see. And last week we talked about eating disorders, all right? So make sure you go back and watch those videos. It's good information. But today we're going to briefly talk about schizophrenia. And I want to just give a definition. I'm going to be reading from some notes. The definition, it says, schizophrenia is a long-term mental health disorder of a type involving a breakdown in the relation between thought, emotion, and behavior, leading to faulty perception. Let me start over. We're talking about the scientific definition of what schizophrenia is. It is a long-term mental disorder of a type involving a breakdown in the relation between thought, emotion, and behavior, leading to faulty perception, inappropriate actions and feelings, withdrawal from reality, all right, and personal relationships, into a life of fantasy, delusion, and a sense of mental fragmentation. So that's in essence what schizophrenia takes you from a normal life, because as opposed to a lot of other mental health disorders, you usually can overcome to a certain extent, and still abide by certain social norms and things like that. But when you're suffering with schizophrenia, unlike anxiety, unlike depression, this prevents you, especially if it is at a severe level, it prevents you from abiding by social norms. Not screaming at somebody in their face, talking to them like you got some sense, or not just coming and choking somebody, when, you ought to just be making your point through, simple statements. These are the things that people are impaired from doing so when they have schizophrenia. Now, one of the things I do want to mention, let me also read what this mentions here on this NAMI paper. NAMI is a great mental health advocacy organization. It's called National Alliance on Mental Illness. Very great organization. Please visit that website, NAMI, NAMI.org. Please, if you're watching, share this video to your page. Even if you don't need the information, somebody else does. But NAMI says schizophrenia is a serious mental illness that interferes with a person's ability to think clearly. That interferes with a person's ability to think clearly, manage emotions, make decisions, and relate to others. It's a complex long-term medical illness affecting 1% of the American population. Although schizophrenia can occur at any age, the average age of onset of schizophrenia tends to be in the late teens to early 20s for men and the late 20s and early 30s for women. It is uncommon for schizophrenia to be diagnosed in a person younger than 12 and older than 40. But we know, as with any condition, just because it's uncommon doesn't mean it's not possible. These are just generalized statements that has been founded from research. Okay? Now, what are some of the symptoms of schizophrenia? These are things we need to know because we have to stop, especially those of us that are in the Christian world, we have to stop thinking everything is a spiritual matter that you can just put some oil on and that you can just pray off, okay? We need to be aware of these different disorders, mental health disorders and mental illnesses, because if we recognize what are the some of the symptoms, what warning signs to look for, we can be more aware as it relates to paying attention to our family, our friends, our loved ones, the people at church, our co-workers, and so forth. But if you're ignorant to a lot of these issues, you're not going to know what to look for, okay? So some of the symptoms that's associated with schizophrenia include hallucinations. That's one of the main things, hallucinations. It takes you from a point of reality and it puts you into a world of fantasy and delusion. So hallucinations, which can include a person hearing voices, seeing things, smelling things that others can't perceive. Now, on the surface, when you hear things like this, it can lend itself to maybe a person can be demonically possessed, because we know that there are certain manifestations of demonic possession that can result in mental illness, mental health disorders, but that's not everybody, okay? Just because something look like a demon, you need to be led by God even in how we discern and see things. And it takes having natural knowledge as well, coupled with the spiritual knowledge that Christ gives to help people, to be able to pinpoint what may be going on and to intervene at the appropriate moment. But hallucinations, which can include a person hearing voices, seeing things, smelling things that others can't perceive. Delusions are another symptom of schizophrenia, okay? We just mentioned hallucinations, but delusions as well, which are simply false beliefs that don't change even when a person who holds them is presented with new ideas or facts. Like, this is why a lot of therapists and counselors say, especially when you're dealing with somebody with schizophrenia, if it's not in a manageable state, if they're not taking care of themselves, they don't have wellness tools in place and so forth, it's hard to reason with someone that's dealing with a high level of schizophrenia, okay? Now, you may have somebody that keeps a good hold on it through wellness tools, therapy, counseling, peer and family support groups. They stand on top of their medical appointments. But people who are generally dealing with a high level of schizophrenia, and they don't have a good hold on it because of not having the wellness tools and things in place, you can't reason with them, okay? So these are just some information you need to know. So if you're dealing with somebody, it's like, man, this person is delusional. They could be dealing with a mental health disorder, specifically as we're talking about schizophrenia, okay? Disorganized thinking, that's the other thing that identifies this mental health disorder of schizophrenia. Disorganized thinking, such as struggling to remember things, organize thoughts, or complete tasks. All right? Let's see. And many people are simply unaware that they have an illness. They've been living in a certain condition so long that they perceive it as being normal, okay? Everybody else can see this disorder manifesting, but they believe that it's an abnormal thing, all right? And whenever you don't see that there is a problem, guess what happens? There's no way you can defeat the problem or put forth actions that'll lead to healing and wholeness, because you have to first, with any problem, acknowledge that a problem exists before you can get help for the problem, okay? Now, another symptom of somebody that's dealing with schizophrenia is negative symptoms such as being emotionally flat or speaking in a dull, disconnected way. It's like, yes, now that could be somebody that's like, you wake up out of your sleep and you see somebody first thing in the morning at work, but we're on the serious side. These are symptoms, of schizophrenia. Now, there are several other mental health disorders where some of these symptoms overlap, and that you may have, certain symptoms that may appear like it could be schizophrenia, but it could be pointing towards anxiety disorders, generalized anxiety disorders, or it can be pointing to certain elements of depression, depending on how severe it is. All right. So the important thing is, listen, I'm not a therapist. I have a heavy background in psychology, behavioral, developmental, and social psychology. I'm certified in mental health first aid, but I am not. Listen, I'm just from the educator side. All right. I'm here to just present the information to you. Now, I'm well connected with a lot of therapists, a lot of counselors of all sorts and backgrounds, male and female. All right. So I know my limits. I'm here to educate. But if you actually need help in being linked up with a therapist or a counselor, please reach out to us. The email address is in the caption of this video. We'll be more than happy to connect you with someone that you can possibly start therapy sessions with or counseling sessions. Listen, and then also another thing, go to Psychology Today. psychologytoday.com/find-a-therapist. That's a great site where you can identify, you can find whatever you think you may need. You can find a female, white Caucasian female who's a Christian. If that's, the demographic of therapist or counselor that you're looking for, you can find that. Or you're looking for a middle-aged African-American male that's a Catholic. You can find that on Psychology Today, Find a Therapist. So whatever it is that you need, okay? Let's see. Now, some of the causes, we were talking about the symptoms of schizophrenia. Hallucinations, delusions, disorganized thinking, struggling to remember things or to organize your thoughts, being unaware that you actually have the illness, and being emotionally flat or speaking in a dull, disconnected way. Now, what are some of the causes? Because people want to know, well, how does this occur? How do people develop schizophrenia? Let me get some water. One of the main things that is a commonplace in all mental health disorders is the element of genetics, okay? Just like diabetes, heart disease, high blood pressure, osteoporosis, kidney disease, neurological problems, they can be in your genetics, as people say, that runs in your family. The same thing with mental health disorders, okay? Such as schizophrenia. It can run in your family. It can be ingrained in your genetics, okay? But one of the things I do realize about any genetic factor that's passed down through the bloodline of different people, there are things you can do in your personal life to stop whatever's in your genetic line from getting the best of you. There are certain wellness tools. There are certain actions you can take in taking care of yourself in life, resting and relaxation, stress management, that can stop a lot of these things. Just because something runs in your family doesn't mean it has to overtake you. I don't care how many generations of people it affected. You can do some things to minimize your chances greatly of developing a lot of disorders or sicknesses or illnesses, all right? But genetics. Schizophrenia isn't caused just by one genetic variation, but a complex of interplay of genetics and environmental influences, okay? While schizophrenia occurs in 1% It's generally thought that it occurs in 1% of the general population. Having a history of family psychosis greatly increases your risk of developing schizophrenia, okay? Now, schizophrenia occurs at roughly 10% of people who have a first-degree relative with the disorder, such as parents or a sibling, okay? Now, we already know genetic factors. The second thing, environment plays a big part in a lot of diseases, illnesses, ailments, sicknesses, mental health disorders, mental illnesses, however you want to term it. Exposure to viruses or malnutrition before birth, particularly in the first and second trimesters, has been shown to increase the risk of schizophrenia. All right. So you have to be real cautious, mothers that are carrying child, that you take proper care of yourself from a nutritional perspective, psychological perspective, and a spiritual perspective. All of this stuff interplays. OK. Let's see. Inflammation or autoimmune diseases can also lead to increased immune. Let me see how I wrote these notes. Inflammation or autoimmune disease can also lead to an increased dysfunction of your immune system. And some of that as well, if you have autoimmune diseases or you have certain inflammations, immune system problems, a lot of this can lead to schizophrenia as well, or increase your chances of developing it. Because just because you have inflammation problems or autoimmune disease disorders doesn't mean you're going to automatically develop schizophrenia, okay? So it's not to say that, but it just increases your chances. Brain chemistry. Problems with certain brain chemicals, including neurotransmitters called dopamine and glutamate, may contribute to schizophrenia. Okay, I'm going to say that again. Brain chemicals. What's going on in your brain plays a part. This is why brain health is so important, okay? But problems with brain chemicals, again, including neurotransmitters called dopamine and glutamate, may contribute to schizophrenia. Neurotransmitters allow the brain cells to communicate with each other. Networks of neurons are likely involved as well. So whenever there's a dysfunction in the neurotransmitters of your brain, or if you have brain damage, this greatly increases your chances of developing various mental health disorders. And as it relates to what we're talking about today, schizophrenia, any type of brain trauma, brain injury, malfunction of the neurotransmitters, as I just read, can increase your chances of developing any mental health disorder, not just schizophrenia, okay? And then the last thing we're going to talk about is drug use, because drug use is another big thing that can spark certain issues that were not there before, or it can uncover issues that were already deep-seated in a person's life, all right? So drug use. Some studies have suggested that taking mind-altering drugs during teen years and young adult can increase the risk of schizophrenia. A growing body of evidence indicates that smoking marijuana, increases the risk of psychotic incidents and the risk of ongoing psychotic experiences. So people think it's a cool thing to smoke pot, as they say, or weed or marijuana, or, reefer, as the older folks will call it. But these things, in some aspects, if you start too young, I don't advocate for it at all. I know they have medical reasons people may need marijuana, but be careful with that, because a lot of people that are using it don't have a medical need for it. All right. So you may want to watch out, because you probably shouldn't see a 9 or 10-year-old smoking weed. All right. Because these are the different mental health disorders that can develop, because whenever your health is impaired, and you stop the natural process of growth and how your body evolves when you're putting chemicals and poisons in your body, guess what? This can be the onset of mental health disorders or mental illnesses, just like schizophrenia. We're talking about the last reason. We talked about genetics, environment, brain chemistry, and now we're talking about drug use. A growing body of evidence indicates, once again, that smoking marijuana increases the risk of psychotic incidents and the risk of ongoing psychotic experiences. The younger and more frequent the use, the greater the risk. All right. Another study has found that smoking marijuana led to earlier onset of schizophrenia and often preceded the manifestation of the illness. All right. So this is not to say that you're going to develop schizophrenia, you're going to develop anxiety disorders, hallucinations, whatever other mental health disorder, just because you may smoke weed. But anything that impairs your brain, that how can I say that adversely affects your brain functioning and how the neurotransmitters go through your brain can be the start of you setting yourself up for a mental health disorder of some sort. Now, diagnosing, we have to stop diagnosing ourselves. Now, I'm teaching you all some things, just some symptoms and warning signs to look out for, just in case you have family members that are dealing with things, friends, co-workers that you may not understand what's going on. If you start educating yourself, it can help you pinpoint what's going on in the lives of people a lot of times. But this is not for you to diagnose them, or even if it's you that's dealing with it. It's not for you to diagnose yourself, okay? Because diagnosing yourself is a grave thing, because sometimes, our eyelash will twitch the wrong way, and then we'll jump on Google and find out, why did my eyelash twitch the wrong way? And Google will say you have eye cancer. Now we're panicking, and then you begin to create more problems than what was originally there, because you're trying to self-diagnose. Don't self-diagnose. It's hard enough for a medical doctor, a therapist, a counselor to give a formal diagnosis to a person, let alone you who have no educational background in that area trying to diagnose yourself. It's dangerous, and it can create more problems. But diagnosing schizophrenia is not easy. The difficulty of diagnosing this illness is compounded by the fact that many people who are diagnosed do not believe they have it. That's the other side of trying to get treatment. As I mentioned about 10 minutes ago, you can't get help for something, or you can't defeat a problem that you refuse to admit is there, or that you don't think is a problem. Because some people been living with a certain thing for so long that it becomes normal to them, and everybody else can see and perceive this is a problem, but they're saying this is no problem. This is regular life. They don't see when they snap, when they go off, when they're hallucinating, when they go off into delusions, because it's a common occurrence. They'll say, what are you talking about? You're the crazy one. You're the one that's snapping. You're the one that's going off. So you have to also know that one of the impairments of schizophrenia is that it puts people out of touch with reality, especially people that don't take care of themselves while dealing with this issue. All right. Now, once again, the difficulty of diagnosing the illness is compounded by the fact that many people who are diagnosed do not believe they have it. Lack of awareness is a common symptom people diagnosed with schizophrenia have, and greatly complicates treatment. To be diagnosed with schizophrenia, a person must have two or more. Listen to this. You can't be diagnosing yourselves. To be diagnosed with schizophrenia, a person must have two or more of the following symptoms occurring persistently in the context of reduced functioning. Listen to this. Delusions, hallucinations, disorganized speech, disorganized or catatonic behavior, negative symptoms. Like some of these things, you can't just diagnose yourself. If somebody is just dealing with delusions or hallucinations, but nothing else, it could be other things going on. Sicknesses, natural bodily sicknesses and diseases and ailments can start delusions and hallucinations, especially people that have come out of medical procedures. So let's not diagnose ourselves or diagnose the people around us, okay? Even if you are a mental health professional, you can't diagnose the people that's closest to you. It's unethical. All right. There are certain things you can see, but because you're so close to them, it impairs your ability to adequately evaluate them. So even if you think somebody in your family, you may be a mental health therapist, and you think your daughter, or you think your spouse, or your sister, brother, your pastor, somebody from your church family or your job is dealing with schizophrenia. Even if you're a mental health therapist, you do not have a right to diagnose, because that's not your patient. You need to get them to a non-biased therapist or a counselor that can help start the process of diagnosing and treatment, okay? I want to say that. It's important that you are aware, people, even if you're not in the mental health field. It's important that you're aware of the various mental health disorders and mental illnesses, how they occur, what they look like, how they manifest, the roots, the causes, what to look for, warning signs. You need to educate yourself on this, because a lot of what we see going on in the lives of people around us can be assisted and helped with timely intervention. But if you're not aware knowledge-wise of what's going on, how can you intervene and get people help that they need, let alone yourself, all right? And I want to say this, it's okay. And this is especially for the faith-based communities. It's okay to trust God and have a therapist as well. Your faith in God, your spiritual relationship with Christ doesn't negate the fact that you may need a therapist, that you may need a counselor, that you may need a mental health peer and family support group, somebody to help walk you through the process of healing and wholeness. You may have a pastor. I'm a pastor of a newly planted church, but I know my boundaries. I know what I'm capable of as it relates to spiritual guidance and giving people the educational aspects of mental illnesses and mental health disorder, but I am not a therapist or a counselor. So I know how to take people from my care and get them into the care of somebody that's more qualified to walk them through the healing and wholeness process, to uncover where the root is of these issues, work on a treatment plan, and then stick to it. I know how to do that. See, bridging the gap between the spiritual and the professional as it relates to mental and emotional health is a great thing. Guess what? Seeing a therapist or a counselor doesn't even negate the importance of your pastor. Your pastor is still important, but your pastor doesn't have everything you need, okay? If you have deep-seated issues that require professional intervention, sure, your pastor can pray with you and even fast with you and trust God for your healing and wholeness. But remember what I said about 25 minutes ago. This may mess up the theology of some people, but God doesn't always move supernaturally. We think we just can pray and God will just come down and poof and everything is well. Guess what? A lot of times when you're really praying and worshiping and fasting, the Spirit of God will give you instructions, things you need to do. And that may include, He may reveal to you in your prayer time, you need to see a therapist. You need to see a counselor. And the Spirit of God talks to us in such detail if we listen that He'll often tell you who to go to or where to look up the information. He may say you need to involve yourself, even if it's you, not you that's dealing with the mental illness directly. He may say because you're dealing with it indirectly, your child, your spouse, your grandmother, your aunt, your uncle, somebody is dealing with it, you still need help, all right? You may be able to join a peer family support group. The Lord may say, hey, you need to go join this peer and family support group in whatever city that you're located in because I want to intervene in the way of you being obedient to the instructions that I'm giving you. All right. So a lot more often we need to listen. What is God telling me to do to better my situation? And then we have to be obedient to what He's telling us to do. We can't just ignore the instructions and pray and think God is just going to poof and all of our conditions are going to go away. No, God moves in the way of obedience. So even you, okay, it's okay. I'm telling you it's okay. Share this video, whoever watching. It's okay to trust in God, have a relationship with God, and have a therapist as well. I'm telling you as a Holy Ghost filled, born again believer, it's okay. All right. Oil and prayer ain't going to cure everything. There are things you need medical intervention because if you broke your shoulder right now, you may pray, but trust me, you're going to go to the doctor and see an orthopedic surgeon. Why? You're not going to go to your pastor and tell your pastor, hey, I broke my shoulder. Can you pray for me? Your pastor may pray for you, but they're going to say out of wisdom, you need to go and get some help. The same thing. All right. So bridge the gap. My assignment is to bridge the gap between mental health and the church. All right. Yes, you should pray. Yes, you should fast. But yes, you should use wisdom, exercise, wellness tools, getting proper rest and sleep, minimizing your stressors, watching what you put in your body, watching what you listen to, watch what you read, and watch what you're entertaining. All of that goes into play. You can't live recklessly and then pray and fast 100 days and think God is just going to solve all of your issues. No, a lot more time, often than not, we don't even need to pray about certain issues. Because why? We already know what got us in the place that we're in at the time. All right? But as it relates to mental health, I'm telling you, it's okay. Make you an appointment with a therapist or a counselor if you need to. Go to Psychology Today. psychologytoday.com/find a therapist, or you can even visit to get a lot of resources from NAMI.org. That's N like Nancy, A like Apple, M like Mary, I like India.org. That's National Alliance on Mental Illness.org. They have great information. Guess what? Listen, we're trying to live the full, the whole, the abundant life that Christ died so that we can live. And it requires both the effort of God and our own effort as well, bridging the gap between mental health and the church. Now, so we've talked about the symptoms of schizophrenia, which are hallucinations, again, delusions, disorganized thinking, being unaware that you actually, or in denial that you actually have the sickness because you're so used to dealing with it, so it's common for you, all right? And everybody else can see you have the problem, but you can't. And then negative symptoms such as emotionally or flat speaking in a dull, disconnected way. We then talked about certain causes: genetics, environment, brain chemistry, and drug use. All right, we talked about the criteria that must be met to be diagnosed with schizophrenia, which is why you can't diagnose yourself. A mental health professional needs to diagnose you. But we talked about a few of the things that need to be present, at least 2 or more: delusions, hallucinations, disorganized speech, disorganized or catatonic behavior, and negative symptoms. Now, everybody want to know, what are the treatment options? If you are dealing with schizophrenia, it looks different for everybody depending on who's dealing with it. So there is just not one shoe that fits all. Okay, there is not one form of treatment that's going to take care of everybody living with schizophrenia. It's a combination of things. And some of the things I'll mention is you may need psychotherapy, such as cognitive behavioral therapy, also known as CBT, cognitive enhancement therapy, also known as CET. You may need to go on antipsychotic medications. All right? Just because you have to go on medications doesn't discount your faith in Christ. Some of us are going to experience miracles, and other of us are going to have to walk through certain processes that leads towards our healing and wholeness. All right. So if you're looking at somebody else and say, "Oh man, God miraculously did this for them as it relates to schizophrenia," that may not be your story, and you have to be okay with that. He may walk you through a process of seeing doctors, having to go on medications and therapy before you can get to that point of healing and wholeness. But stop looking at other people's lives. Just follow the plan that God has for your life. All right. Let's see. Wellness tools. You need to make sure that you're journaling. And I personally have talked to people that are dealing with high level of schizophrenia, very severe schizophrenia. And journaling helps them manage their emotions and their thought process. It decreases the hallucinations and the delusions that they fall prey to. And a lot of them tell me, I know when I haven't done enough journaling because I start seeing stuff that wasn't really there. And then when I went back and journaled for about 2 or 3 hours, I calmed down and I began to see things as it is realistically. So journaling is a big thing I advocate for. That is the name of my mental health advocacy organization, Journaling Saves Lives. All right. Journaling Saves Lives. Link with us on Facebook. We have 2 pages, a group page and we have a business page. Also, our email is journalingsaveslives@yahoo.com. Please, if you need mental health resources, you need help, you need some direction, instructions, please reach out to us with your questions and your concerns, and we'll do our best to get back to you in a timely manner. And another thing we do as well, people don't know this, at House of Love Ministries, in conjunction with our mental health aspect of our ministry, which is Journaling Saves Lives, we assist people that may need a little help with paying for mental health services, therapy or counseling. We will sow 1 or 2 or maybe 3 sessions into people, and then from there we challenge them to invest in their own well-being. So if you need some help with that and you identified a therapist or a counselor and you need some help paying for it, reach out to us. You can reach out journalingsaveslives@yahoo.com or House of Love FL@yahoo.com and talk with us, and we'll see what it is we can do for you. Obviously, we can't help everybody, but we do our best to help who we can, when we can. All right. Now, wellness tools, like I talked about journaling. The other thing, you need to make sure you're not living a sedentary lifestyle. I told y'all about 30 minutes ago, a sedentary lifestyle is a friend of mental illness. So you need to exercise, you need to stretch, you need to walk. You need to engage in physical activity on a daily basis. You need to watch what it is you are putting in your mouth and eating and digesting. All right. You need to make sure that you have adequate water intake. All right. Let's see. You need to watch the relationships you have. All of this plays a part in your mental and emotional health, because if you have poisonous friendships, poisonous relationships, that is going to have an adverse reaction and an effect on your mental health, and you can begin developing things. Stress overload, also known as distress, is a dangerous thing. And guess what? It can create problems that were not previously there. So be careful with the relationships and the friendships that you have. All right. Another thing, rest and relaxation. When you don't get proper rest, and rest and sleep are not the same thing. We need sleep. Sleep and rest are two different things. I'll say it like this. Sleep is the actual, your eyes is closed and you go through the stages. You need that. Resting is not enough in itself, okay? You need to have sleep. Sleep, and you can't be sleeping 2 and 3 hours talking about you're doing good. You may think you're doing good from a subconscious perspective, but your body cannot function off of 2, 3, 4 hours of sleep. I don't care who you are, and I'll tell you that to your face. You can't. You cannot literally, physically function off of 2, 3, 4 hours. And in many cases, 5 is not enough. The average adult should be getting 5.5 to 6 hours of sleep. Bless your heart if you can get 8 hours of sleep, all right? Most of us can't, but if you can get, the average adult should be getting about 5.5 to 6 hours of sleep. So please, this all plays a part in, as it relates to developing mental health disorders or your fight against the mental health disorder that you already have. There are certain things we can do to prevent ourselves from developing a mental health disorder. And if you already are dealing with something, there are things you can do to be made healed and whole from that mental health disorder. All right. So we talked about rest and relaxation. Relaxation and rest, that's just simply, you come home, turn off the TV, no media, no cell phone. You just throw your head back and just kind of breathe. Get you a cup of cold water or some Kool-Aid, or grab you something to eat, in your own peaceful space. Or if your house is, full of ruckus because of kids and family members, go to the park, roll your window down, sit there or sit by the beach, by the lake, different things you can do just from a rest and relaxation perspective, all right? So these are things you need to be doing every day on a daily basis. Some type of physical exercise, making sure you're resting, making sure you're sleeping, making sure you're drinking water, making sure, also the other thing I want to mention too, what you listen to, the music you listen to, the TV you watch, what you're absorbing, what you're putting in your body, what you're reading, what you're entertaining. A lot of this stuff goes into play as it relates to developing problems, all right? Mental health problems. And it also impairs when you're absorbing poison, you're listening to poison, you're watching the wrong things on TV, you're listening to the wrong things, reading the wrong magazines, reading the wrong books. You're putting junk into your psychological system. And guess what? Whenever you put junk into your system, junk is going to come out, all right? So if you are dealing with a mental health disorder, it's very important that you stick to your wellness tools. It's very important. And if you don't have a mental health disorder, you really need to make sure you stay on top of your daily wellness tools and healthy habits so that you don't develop a mental health disorder. Because like I said, it doesn't matter what runs in your family, heart disease, schizophrenia, anxiety disorders, kidney disease, high blood pressure. There are things you can do in your life that decreases the chances of those issues overtaking you. All right. And of course, last but not least, and I don't mention these in any particular order, but you need to stay connected to a faith-based community. I don't care what kind of wellness tools and healthy habits and therapy and counseling. If you leave the Lord Jesus out of whatever it is you do, you leave yourself in an incomplete treatment plan. So Jesus has to be the center of everything we do. And I'm talking about the believer. If you don't believe in Jesus, that's a different story. But the wellness tools to an extent can still work. All right. To an extent. But I believe our faith plus professional resources can produce great results. So make sure you're praying. Make sure you're surrounding yourself with a healthy church family, a healthy, loving, Bible-believing church family. All right. Make sure you're staying connected there. Make sure you're fasting. And fasting doesn't just mean from food. I'm going to tell you one of the things I challenge the people at House of Love with fasting from every Monday is social media. They can't watch no movies. They can't watch no Netflix. They can't listen to no music. Take yourself, fast from all of that stuff. Even sometimes worship music can stop and clog up your hearing and what God really wants to say to you. And just even giving your brain a point of rest and relaxation. So I challenge them, leave all of that. You don't have to just turn your plate over. If you want to turn your plate over, that's fine. But I found that the challenge is the distractions and how our time is stolen. That's why I challenge people. You'd be surprised how healthy and whole you feel, how happy, how full of energy you feel when you stop inundating yourself with a lot of media, a lot of TV, a lot of Netflix, a lot of social media, because we sit here and we scroll. That is bad for your mental health. scrolling and just looking through other people's life on their timeline. And before you know it, you've been in that mode for about 3 or 4 hours. You got to stop that. All right. So I pray that something I said, listen, if you missed anything, the video will be posted in 10 minutes. Come back and watch it. This is information you need. Please, if you're watching this, share this to your page now. Please, I need you to share this to your page now. This is information that you may not need, but it could save the life of somebody else. So please, if you're watching, share this to your page now, and you'll be able to come back and watch it later. Even if you're just tuning in, please, this is Mental Health Awareness Month, where I'm just trying to educate the people from a professional and a spiritual perspective, because again, my assignment is to bridge the gap between mental health and the church. All right. So please share this video to your page, and I admonish you all, make sure you stay educated in mental health matters: depression, anxiety, schizophrenia, eating disorders, bipolar disorders, and everything in between. Make sure you're knowing what are the warning signs, what are the symptoms, what are the causes, what are the treatment options. These are things you must know. You cannot say, because I'm not in the mental health field, I can remain ignorant. Not being in the mental health field does not give you a key to be ignorant, all right? In fact, you need to be even more admonished to go forth and learn all the information you can, because there are a lot of people that are dealing with this stuff right under our nose. Family, friends, loved ones, people that we've been knowing all our life. And had we just paid attention and learned what are these symptoms, what are these issues, and learned all we could, it could better help us pinpoint what could be going on with somebody, all right? So then we can get them timely help. So we just thank you for tuning in. Please share this video to your page. Go back and watch 3 weeks ago. We talked about depression. 2 weeks ago, we talked about anxiety disorders. Last week, we talked about eating disorders. And today, we talked about schizophrenia. Next Friday is the last Friday in Mental Health Awareness Month, and we're going to be talking about bipolar disorder, bipolarism, or bipolar disorder. So make sure you tune in. Next Friday on this page, 5:15, we're going to be talking about bipolar disorder. So make sure you go and look up information, right? Keep information in your email, in your cell phones, organizations like NAMI, National Alliance on Mental Illness, or even my organization, Journaling Saves Lives. These are organizations that help people, individuals, and families get the help, peer and professional, that they need. Let's see. Psychology Today, once again, I'm not going to say that enough. It's okay to see a therapist and have faith in God. psychologytoday.com/find-a-therapist. All right. So be sure, even if it's not you that needs it, intervene on somebody's behalf that may need a therapist or a counselor. And I want to say this before I get off, and I'm done. Don't force people to take help. There is a certain level God meant for us to be interdependent upon one another. Interdependence has a healthy mixture of personal accountability and a support system. Okay, so be careful that you don't force or make people take the help that you're trying to give them, because when you force people to take help that they are not ready to receive, or that they simply don't want to receive, you can create more problems or make the problem worse. Okay, so be careful that when you present help to people, whether it's people that's close to your coworkers, your spouse, your children, your parents, your sisters, brothers, nieces, nephews, your cousins, make sure you do so in an open-ended manner, giving them options. Don't tell them, hey, you need to see a therapist, you need to see a counselor, you need to go to a peer and family support group, or you need to do this, you need to do that. No, you present it in an open-ended way, because I'm going to tell you this as well. It doesn't matter how much of a support system a person has. If they don't have it within themselves to do what's necessary to live a healed and whole life, they won't be healed and whole no matter how much you support them, all right? So again, and please, if you have tried to do your best to help and it's leading to destruction or leading to tragedies, don't blame yourself. Don't take on what's called an existential debt, meaning you feel if you could have did something else, maybe they would still be alive. Maybe they wouldn't have hung themselves. Maybe they wouldn't have overdosed. Don't take on that burden. Do what you can do to help people. Present them with the resources. Present them with a loving support system. Let them know that you're there to pray with them and to help them. But guess what? It is on the person to be healed, whole, and made well. All right? And if you've done all of that, done all that you could, that you know how to do, and it still leads to tragedy, free yourself. It's not your fault when something tragic happens if you've done all that you can to intervene and to stop it. All right? So I love you all. This is Pastor Matt Johnson, Mental Health Awareness Month. Make sure you stay educated. I love you. We'll see you next Friday, 5:15, and we're going to be talking about bipolar disorder. All right? Have a wonderful day.